Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, whichever time you guys are checking us out, and welcome back to another episode of XSGaming Podcast. And James, how do you like the new theme song?
Man, I love it. I know, like, you had sent it to me, and I was like, dude, I'm like, that thing, it's rocking. I think I really dig it, dude. It's awesome.
Yeah, we've, this year, actually, it's the 1st of August since we're recording right now. But last month was actually our anniversary of the podcast. We've been doing this since 2012. It's hard to believe. And I was like, you know what? We need a theme song. So I went ahead and wrote a little thrashy riff. And I was like, this sounds cool. This sounds like it would be good on a podcast.
You really hit. I've been listening to a lot of Anthrax and stuff lately. I think I told you, I was like, dude, it sounds kind of like Anthraxy, man. It's like, Anthrax is awesome. The band, not the chemical.
Well, I've been doing a lot more music lately, and actually I have a really good idea. And this is completely off the wall. I've gotten into cassettes lately, like recording and collecting cassettes. And one of the things I want to do, because the YouTube channel, which if you guys are listening haven't checked out, is youtube.com/Xander Skullion. The YouTube channel is almost at 4,000 subscribers, and I was like, when it hits 4,000, I want to make a custom cassette. And one side is all video game covers, and the next side is all original video game tracks that I've written. And I was like, it'd be cool to make it its own little case, very limited, have a giveaway, just send someone a cassette of music. Cassettes are cool. I like them.
Yeah, man. I mean, a lot of people really have jump back on those. I've honestly I've kept it, much like me, I've kept the VCR. I've kept the cassette player because I have a lot. I'm a huge fan, I said before, old radio shows, and I had so many I inherited from my uncle. And granted, I can listen to them on my phone, which mostly I do, but I still have, old little CD and cassette deck next to my bed that it's in case I just want to pop in, one of those tapes. And I still actually have a ton of my old tapes too. They're not really easily accessible, but I still have those. But I mean, to me, it's a weird thing. I mean, honestly, as we've been, retro collectors, and we still enjoy retro games, and sometimes the cassettes to me is man, that's kind of odd, but I see a lot of one of my friends, Eric Blair's got a band, Mumula. It's kind of a little surf horror rock band. They put out some of their stuff, digital, cassette, and CD, which was one of the first ones I remember seeing. And a lot of it's real big in the kind of black metal community too. I've seen a buddy of mine is always posting these pictures of cassette tapes. So it's a thing that's coming back, dude. I mean, Walkmans were something we grew up with. It was just a necessity of life. And, to see cassettes was, like I said, you mentioned having to listen, to the whole thing. Though we did have that one little button I mentioned. I can't remember what it's called, but it's a button that would kind of fast forward 2 minutes,
Yeah.
It was select, serve, or it was something like that, where it's you could skip a little bit. And then we had that awesome new technique to where when you got to the end of a tape, it would flip to the next one immediately.
Yeah, it was funny because I went to this department store in town, Rose's. I don't know.
Rose's rules.
Oh man, I went to Rose's and I bought a brand new stereo that was a CD cassette player combo for $50. And I was like, you know what? This is brand new. This isn't I went to some thrift store and found a cassette stereo or something. This is brand new in the box. That was crazy to think. Here I am in 2021 buying a brand new stereo that has a cassette player so I could listen to old cassettes. And it was funny because I have an old book bag of cassettes, and I was going through it and I found some old tapes that I made when I was 5 or 6 years old. And
wow.
And it was me recording video game stuff, playing a video game, but also I could hear myself recording the sound test.
Yeah.
I would go to sound tests and play video game soundtracks and try to record it. And I was just man, nothing's really changed after all these years.
No, I have a few old ones. We would do a little variety show I did with my neighbor, and then I would record wrestling matches off a TV.
Yeah.
Hey, people listen to baseball and football. I could listen to wrestling on the radio, or my tapes.
Yeah.
I got some match of Tugboat and Akeem or something. I have a few old ones like that, but it's amazing when you dig through old cassettes of what you will find, like what you had, because sometimes you'll forget about it. And if you kept a hold of them, I'd see another trick too. We would do, of course, if you had a cassette you bought, and there was always extra space at the end of the side, you stick those little balls of paper in the top,
Yep.
and then you could add a couple extra tracks. Like we did that. Like if you had the Metallica tape that didn't have Am I Evil and Blitzkrieg, well, if you had the regular one, you could put those little balls of paper, and then you could record Blitzkrieg and Am I Evil and stick them on your own cassette, and then you'd have the ultimate version of it.
I know. I did that as a joke to one of my friends one time when I was younger. He had made some tape or whatever and let me borrow it. And I took the pieces of paper and I put it in there, and like in the middle of the song, I started like recording like a boy band. So he was like sitting there, sitting there listening to like Metallica or Slayer, and all of a sudden here
I
comes
that
way. He was like, "Dude, what the hell?" And I'm like, but yeah, I mean, it's a different time, and it's so funny because we all talk about the retro nostalgia, and I was like talking to my mom the other day, and we were talking about how because I saw pictures of like these like 20-year-olds. I posted pictures of them like at a club. There was like some club advertisement on Facebook here in town, and they posted pictures of themselves, and it looked like the freaking 90s because they all were wearing like 90s style clothes. And I told my mom, I'm like, well, this kind of makes sense, because I was like, yeah, I remember when my sister's like 5 years older than me. But I remember when my sister was a teenager, she was really into the 60s. She thought the 60s was awesome. And I was like, you think about it now, these kids, I call them kids because they're like in their early 20s and the 2000s, they think the 90s and 80s is awesome. And when you really think about it, it's like, wow, that was 30 years ago. It's like that 30-year-old gap of nostalgia like recycles itself. And it's very fascinating when you really think about that.
Yeah, so many things do come back, and I mean, you had the different groups of kids in school, and of course, we had some of the a little bit more hippie ones, even because I'm sister's 5 years older than you, I'm a little bit probably closer to her age, and it's like you had those groups of kids that had the bell bottom, pants. A lot of them would steal bowling shoes when we went on the bowling field trips, which they did look kind of dope, man. I like those too. But you definitely did those groups. I mean, everything comes back. The vinyl, you kind of understood a little bit more, and that was huge. And the cassettes, like I said, I mean, I think it's cool to see like Walkmans and stuff coming back, people looking for those. And I wonder if they still have those big bright yellow waterproof ones. Those are always so hideous. I never quite had one of those, but they were a product of the time. But hopefully they're waterproof now, though. I mean, don't want to electrify yourself with a Walkman.
Oh yeah, and getting into some of the gaming news, I know there hasn't been a whole lot going on that we care to talk about anyway on the show. We don't cover all the gaming news that happens, but I will say they did announce, I believe it was last week, a new Dead Space. Dead Space.
Yeah, it's supposed to be like a remake, right?
Like I'm excited about that.
I've seen some, people are like, oh no, because a lot of people love that game. It's one, honestly, man, I started, I never finished it. I've always wanted to go back to. I did play the one on Wii because it was more of a light gun shooter.
Yeah.
Which is really awesome. And it's not just, shooting stuff. You also have to do some, I remember like unscrewing bolts, with some weapon I had. So I had a little bit more to it, but a lot of people love it. But I mean, I kind of tend to think, you think of what they did a few years ago when it came out, to have one come out now, like it could be super sick, especially maybe if they change the, direction. You look at how Resident Evil goes now with the whole, like, first person's completely different. So don't really know what they're planning. And, Dead Space is a game I do want to revisit, the old ones, but I think it could be really cool.
Dead Space was a very special game. I enjoyed the series. And when it came out, it was like the survival horror was kind of a shadow of its former self. I felt like survival horrors really came back in the last couple of years, especially with, Resident Evil and PT back when that was the thing, and people wanted that new Silent Hill. So it started coming back, and Dead Space was just awesome because Dead Space just made me think of the first Alien movie. Like, it was like before Alien Isolation, that was the best Alien movie or video game,
if you wanted that alien survival horror, and Resident Evil, it jumped a little bit more. Some would say like the action train, it kind of changed, and I think Dead Space kind of did give you a little bit more feeling of dread. And like I said, I kind of hate, like, I never really at least finished the first one. Like I said, I know there was like 3 of them. So I mean, that would be a really good one, I think, to go back and
see. I
and
never
revisit.
I never played 3. I heard mixed things on 3. I heard 3 was a lot more like action. I heard it was more of a like the way Resident Evil 6 is. That's kind of how Dead Space 3 was. I mean, he even had like an online multiplayer and stuff like that. So by the time Dead Space 3 came out, I never like went and picked it up. But Dead Space 1 and 2 were awesome. I actually played Dead Space 2 before I played Dead Space 1.
Yeah, that does seem to be the progression there a lot of times of survival horror. That it eventually it's just going to go into action. You know,
it kind of has to after a while. I mean, it gets stale. You know, you think about like Resident Evil 1 through 3, or even Resident Evil 1 through Code Veronica. You know, we look at that as like those are timeless games, but I remember by the time like Resident Evil 3 and Code Veronica were coming out, people were starting to get a little like, okay, well, what's next? You know, and then we had Resident Evil 4, and that just blew the doors open.
People love, and kind of product of his time, because so many of those Resident Evil games, you know, really they were all, you know, relegated to the PS1, you know. So I mean, things do get outdated. Where at least Dead Space got to start on the PS3, you know. So at least they had a new jump. But still, you're gonna kind of, you know, run out of steam on some things, and you go to the, like I said, you're gonna just progress up, and then eventually you can come out with remakes. You can redo everything better than what you initially intended, and then, you know, people have a new experience. Maybe people that never played it before get to, you know, check it out too. So this could be a really cool revitalization, you know, of a game we haven't heard of in quite a while.
And you mentioned Steam. I think that's a good segue to talk about another announcement since our last episode. I can't remember. I think we talked about the Switch OED. I think we might have talked about that last episode. But the big news, of course, is Valve's new handheld, the Steamdeck. And it's kind of calmed down a little bit. You don't hear as much about it online now. But that first week when that thing was announced, holy crap, the internet just did not know what to do about this announcement.
Yeah, I think a lot of people that have went into pre-order, you know, that might have been why it's calmed down, because I mean, but it did shut down, you know, the site apparently when people were first initially getting on it. And I'd been talking to Justin down Phoenix. He was kind of giving me a real good rundown, you know, of it, because it sounded really interesting to me. And I'd mentioned before about getting a laptop, and I started thinking like maybe this could really do, you know, all I kind of want in a laptop. And it's got the handheld mode, and I think he had told me initially that unless you had ordered something on Steam in the past month, you couldn't order till Sunday, which I think would be two weeks ago, I believe. But I actually went ahead and made an account that Saturday, and it let me. It's not quite a pre-order; it's a deposit. I mean, it's a great price. It's only $5.
Yeah,
and that kind of gets you on a list. Now, the ones that shut down the site, I think they may get theirs in like Q1. They kind of have, you know, them spread out. I know mine, not Q1. It might be Q4 this year. Because mine was for it was either 1 or 2 of next. But it still kind of puts you on a list. That's so far away, though. I'm pretty sure I'll get in, you know. But it's still kind of a gamble. But, I mean, that thing, dude, I mean, that'll be awesome. Like I said, I really look forward to having access to Steam, good old games, emulation. I'm sure Game Pass is going to run on there. It really could just be like this all-in-one thing.
Yeah,
that's really awesome. Like I said, especially $5, you know, for the chance to get in. Of course, I did pre-order they had 3 models, and the one I did was I want to say it was around $530, you know, which you'd have to pay later. And, you know, like I said, I had the Poly Mega pre-ordered, and I canceled that, which actually I think they're shipping out sometime soon, amazingly. It's finally coming out. But and we've said before too, you know, neither of us are really looking at getting a new system this moment, and that is new system money. But I think it's something that just I would end up playing and maybe enjoying a bit more. And it kind of, like I said, it has all the needs I think I was looking for in a laptop. So, you know, we'll see how it goes. And I mean, I think it sounds like a pretty awesome thing.
Yeah, you think about like this time next year or so, or you know, a couple months from now, James will be like recording the new episode of a podcast, and you'll be recording through your Steam Deck.
Yeah.
Through Google Hangouts, you know, we record. You'll be like, yeah. But I mean, for the price, you really think about it. For $500, and some change. I mean, you're getting a handheld PC that, I mean, honestly, and they've made these mini PCs for a while now, because I've been looking into them. These mini PCs that can play, PS2 emulation, Sega Saturn. Some of them can even do PS3 emulation. And those alone, those mini PCs that you order, those alone are still like $700-800. You know,
Yeah.
and this thing's gonna be 500. You'll already have games right off the bat if you have a Steam account. You just transfer your Steam account, boom, you got games to play. Steam has no shortage of games, and then you also would have like something like Game Pass. Then we mentioned like emulation. I mean, the fact this thing's gonna be open source and it runs Linux, but you can also run Windows. I mean, there is so much with the community with the Steam Deck I could see brewing, that I could see this thing just being really freaking awesome. I mean, the only thing that I have concerns about is Valve's support of it, because a lot of people mention the Steam Box, about how the Steam Box really didn't get supported that well. But honestly, I think the Steam Box, that came out so long ago, and I feel like that when the Steam Box came out, the gaming demographic wasn't what it is today with the Steam Deck, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. Man, and like I said, at the end, like just so many things you can do with it. It's like I said, I think it'll be all I was looking for in a laptop, and hopefully, I do get on that list, do end up getting one. I mean, the handheld mode, like I said, it just that really makes things awesome. Of course, you can hook it up to your TV, and they have a dock you can get, but you can really use any dock. So that they really kind of leave it open to where you're not stuck having to buy necessarily their product. You want to hook up to a TV. So, and like I said, we all love the handhelds and everything like that, of course. And just to be able to have that and play all those things on a handheld system, we'll see. It does kind of look a little big. We'll see how it actually feels, when it comes out. But I'm sure it'll probably feel better than it actually looks.
Indeed,
Probably said that many times.
And speaking of handhelds as well, and pre-orders, James, you actually pre-ordered a brand new handheld coming out soon as well.
I did. The very interesting Playdate. And as I had sent this link to a friend of mine, it was called Play.date, and he told me, I'm not clicking on that. And I was like, oh, wow. I'm like, dude, that does look suspect.
It does.
I double-checked it. I said, it's safe, man, because I sent him a picture. I was like, I pre-ordered this. He's like, what the hell is that?
I mean, when I think of Playdate, I think of, for some reason, I kept thinking of Playmates, and then I would think of Ninja Turtle toys.
I don't know. Maybe the coolers even too, isn't that one? Playmate. We're not even thinking of like Playboy magazine. It's like coolers and games. But it's a very unique niche little system. I'd heard about a while back initially, and I always give credit because I do listen to CU podcast, and I love Ian on there because me and him have a big love of handhelds, and he was actually praising the Steamdeck like on its price, because I know he had thought it would be like way much more than it was for what it could do. And hearing that opinion made me feel better, about going to it. But the Playdate, it's does not have a backlit screen, but it has one of the most reflective screens ever. So you can play it by candlelight, which just sounds, I don't know, it sounds cool to me. But it has a little crank. You got a lot of different developers are doing these small games. The guy that did Katamari, he's doing one. There's a big list of people you've heard of, people you haven't. And they kind of have little systems where every week you get 2 games. So you have it hooked up to the Wi-Fi, and they download to your system automatically. And they're just all kind of like short games, and people can get together and kind of discuss them. But there's so many different ones, and it looks so cool to me.
It does.
And, I did, like I said, full disclosure, it was about $210, and that's after shipping and taxes. So it's like a $180 system, which I could see, some people being like, yeah, that's not for me. Because that is a big chunk of money. A Steam Deck is $530, and this is almost half of that. So kind of niche, but it's something that I just decided I'd like to dive into, and really curious to see the games that end up coming out for it. I've seen previews of the 24 And I mean, it's such a wide array of different games, and it's one of those things like I think could be really cool depending on the people that jump into it and make the games. And if
Yeah.
somehow it flops, it'll probably still be some huge collector item because the first batch of pre-orders was 20,000, and which is the one I got on that'll come out this year, and it sold out within an hour. But they did leave pre-orders open for anybody else that will get one, at probably within the first quarter of next year, and at least they gave the people the chance, to get it. But to see 20,000 units of this weird little thing sell out in an hour, I think it's still really cool and shows there is some, people behind it and there's some investment, and it's just an
Yeah.
interesting thing.
I think it's one of those things too that even if it was to flop, I think it would have such a like underground community, with all the indie
That too.
developers. And I feel like that, if it was one of those things that kind of flopped, you would still have like that Playdate community of people that would be like, hey, we're because it is a handheld for indie developers,
Right. And
so
it does have a thing on there to where you can make your own games. You hook up your
yeah.
computer. So, we've had people, I think even on the links, making games for years. So you're very right that you could have this insane community of just people continuously making games, for this over the years.
And from what I heard, I believe the people behind the Playdate are the same people who made the Untitled Goose Game.
Yeah, I
Yep.
think you're right. There's a couple. I know, like they have a Panic
Yeah, it was
as one of the
Panic.
main companies, and
Yeah.
then there's some of the people doing the developing was Teenage Gaming, which I think is a Swedish company that have done a lot of things too. So like they have some good people working behind it. With some very quirky. That's the thing you mentioned. Untitled Goose Games. That's just a weird, quirky game.
I
This looks
love
like
it.
a weird, quirky system. Like I said, you got that crank on the side. You got your D-pad, a couple buttons, and just the games to me just all look very interesting. You have a wave racing game. You have some kind of dungeon crawler game. It's just all over the board, and like you said, with the community going into it, it's something just I like. It's kind of taking a chance because, like I said, it is that $210. That is quite a lot. You have to pay it up front, but I give them credit. You can cancel anytime for any reason if you want to get your money back if you do jump on it, which is just always good. And I give Polymega credit for doing that too. When I got a refund, I got it very quick. So it's good to know that if you take a chance on something and something happens in your life, that you can be like, oh, hold on, like I need that back. So it's like I got to give all those companies credit for that.
Yeah, we're in a different era of gaming. I feel like 2021 is the year of the handheld because you got the Steam Deck, you got the new Switch model coming out, you got the Playdate, and you also got the Evercade. People
And Analog Pocket.
Yeah, you got
October finally.
yeah, you got people like crazy about all this like different consoles and gaming. I mean, then you got of course you got the main stuff, the Switch, the PS5, Series X. Then you have like the people going back into like wanting to play couch co-op and with the television Amico. I mean, there's so much in gaming that is like insane when you really sit back and you think about where we are. It's just like, holy crap. I was thinking about that the other day. I was like, man, there's just so much out there. Like anyone out there who will say like gaming's not what it used to be, or games aren't fun anymore, it's all this, that, and the other. I'm like, dude, get out of the rock you're under, man, because there's so much great stuff out there. It's
It's
great.
kind of what you make of it.
Yeah.
I say the same thing with wrestling lots of times. As much as be like, wrestling wasn't as great as back in the late '90s, but man, there's so much more of it, and there's such a variety that I think you have way more choices, and maybe you can find something that you like, you know, even more than if you only had choice 1 and 2. It's better to have choice 1 through 10, and I think you'll
Yeah.
find something a little bit more suited. And like you said, even seeing the Amico, like someone putting out a system nowadays is just crazy. And then
Yeah.
having that Steam Deck, little things like the Playdate, and to see it just kind of sell out and still have huge
Yeah,
contingent of people behind it. It's
and
awesome.
I'm the kind of person too. Like I want it all to succeed. I want all of it to do so freaking well because honestly, the more stuff we have out there that is successful as a gamer, the more selection you have. Like I don't understand like people that just want to go out their way and hope that something fails or just want something to crash and burn. And that could be anything from, even the new consoles. There are people out there that are like, Sony loyalists that, want Microsoft to burn and not make Xbox. I was like, why? Why don't you want Xbox around anymore? Like,
Yeah, I'm not much of a loyalist to like anything to just
yeah,
like hate something else that much. I'm just like I like try. Hey, if you don't like something, that's okay. Somebody else is gonna
exactly.
like it, and you're gonna be able to find something that's suited perfectly for you. The more choices there are.
Yeah, and it's just like I've not no time in the history of gaming have we ever had like a console that or a game that's came out that was like so successful that other companies were like, you know what, we're not going to make video games anymore. I mean, we've had companies go out of business or like Sega going third party, not making consoles. We've had stuff like that, but that was just because they lost money. It wasn't like like, oh man, Red Dead Redemption 2. That's a really good game. Sorry guys, we're not going to make any more Shovel Knight games. Sorry.
Yeah. See, hell, look at Nintendo. I mean,
Yeah.
Nintendo's been the king of the handheld for how long, and yet we still have other people making handheld systems.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't shut it down. It's like it just kind of sometimes even I think inspires
Yeah.
other people to go out and make these other ones to where you can, like I said, find something perfectly suited for you.
I'm going back to the Playdate. I remember when I first heard it didn't have a backlit screen. I'm like, oh, that's kind of weird, But the thing about it is like with the Playdate not having a backlit screen, I heard the battery life is just amazing. I was watching this video of it was like some lady from some sort of like electronic publisher company made a YouTube video where she was talking about the Playdate, and she was like, yeah, I haven't charged it in 2 weeks. I'm like, whoa. Like 2 weeks because of that backlit screen's not there.
Yeah, and everything I hear is like that screen is still great. Like it's so reflective. It's not going to be like playing, a Game Boy in the dark, which you wouldn't be able to do. I mean, you had to have all those little light hookups and such. But I mean, the thing when they say, and I trust them too, to say you could play it by candlelight. Actually, I have a candle going right now from Ryan Cadaver's Candle Company, and but to be able to sit there and play that, and like I said, the screen and all the pictures, like I said, it looks great. We all think no backlit, that equals crap. But hey, things have progressed. It's
Yeah.
not 2000 on a GBA, so I'm sure it'll be much better. And like I said, just all the different games and what people are going to create, I think it's just exciting. To me, I'm
Yeah.
really looking forward to it. And like I said, if it bombs, hey, it'll be a collector item I can pitch off on eBay, so it'll be okay.
Indeed, indeed. And what we decided to do for this episode and the main topic is talk about handheld gaming. We've already been kind of talking about it anyway, but that was kind of like the topic that I messaged James a couple of days ago. I'm like, yeah, let's do an episode on handhelds. I don't think we've covered too much with that. But with that being said, James, do you remember your first gaming handheld?
I mean, the one I would have to go back and say actually was this. Man, I want to say it wasn't quite like Firestar, but it had something like that in the name because that was the chick on Spider-Man and Its Amazing Friends. But it was a pinball game. Okay, it had like the red screen, with the little red ball. I guess that was LCD. It probably ran on about 6 batteries, and that was a big thing because back then, I had the Atari 8-bit, computer with these games on floppy disks, and I had this cool pinball, and everybody loves that. And to have that, which I think was a pretty adequate pinball game, for the time, had a couple different flippers, and I think I still have it somewhere, maybe in my mom's attic. But that was actually one of the very first ones I remember. Of course, in the early days of handhelds.
Yeah, I mean, I of course remember the Tiger handhelds and stuff like that, and some of the little LED games. But the one that really sticks out in my mind that I remember playing, and I consider it a handheld. I mean, it's not really it wasn't really like electronic handheld game, but it was kind of the precursor. And I think you remember these. I was looking online and I couldn't find the model name, but it was like a car racing game, and it was like a projector screen that had lights, and like you kind of like slid. You had like a little slider that you would like kind of slide the car. Like it'd be going up the road, and the road was the projector, it was like on a roller, and it would sit there and animate, and the lights would light
Yeah.
up. You know what I'm talking about? Like those things were
Yeah.
freaking
No.
awesome. I love that thing.
I was almost going to go way back, and I was thinking of that those little things that had the water in them that you would hang you push the button and it pushed the hoops or the basketball into the net. I was like, oh wait, that's probably a little bit too old right there.
I remember my first handheld was a little paddle and a ball with a string. But yeah, man, I sucked at those things. I was never good at that little paddle ball
Nobody
thing.
is.
But yeah, and of course, you had the Tiger handhelds. I think that's what was really big at the time, because they were so, even back then, they were dirt cheap. And I remember I wanted a Genesis. I wanted Sonic the Hedgehog. I was really into Sonic, and I remember I saw the Sonic 2 Tiger handheld, and I was like, I can ask for this. This is realistic, because I knew my mom wasn't going to buy me a new console, let alone a new game and all that stuff. So I was like, yeah, I'll take the Sonic the Hedgehog Tiger handheld. And that thing sucked, but man, I played the hell out of it. I freaking played it all the time.
I had the Double Dragon one.
Yeah.
And I think Mega Man 2. The Double Dragon one, I thought actually wasn't that bad. And it's kind of weird because you would see those and they had the huge, of course, titles, Castlevania, Double Dragon. These were big on the Nintendo. And some of these even still existed. You figure by the time the Game Boy came out, these Tiger LCDs maybe were even bigger. So it's they were both coexisting because, as you said, sometimes, whether it was a Genesis or a Game Boy, you still had to, ask for a whole new system.
Yeah.
Then that's games, which, of course, they're less than Nintendo, but still Game Boy games were, $20 to $30 still.
Yeah.
That, or you could get one of these that were, maybe $10, maybe $15, and it's you just knew it was going to suck. Sometimes as a kid, you didn't really care. It was just kind of having that newer game.
Yeah.
But, having the Game Boy finally come out, I think was just pretty revolutionary. And, they've managed to stay on top of that. And I remember when I first got mine, it wasn't right when it came out, but, I had the Game Boy. It came with Tetris, and then I had Super Mario Land. That was the initial setup of mine, which is very good. And then I think I had a couple of used games. I had some crappy boxing game, and man, what was one? And Radar Mission was a huge one for me, which I do love.
Yeah, I
remember, pretty much Battleship.
I remember seeing the Game Boy cartridges back then and be like, oh man, they're so little. They're like little NES carts. Those are so cool. And you look at them now, oh, they're kind of hefty.
Yeah.
comparing it to a Switch card or even a DS or Game Boy Advance. It's kind of funny, but yeah, I remember when I got my Game Boy. I remember I got it. By the time I got my Game Boy, they had already started coming out with the different colors, and I wanted a yellow Game Boy so bad, but I ended up just getting the normal one. And I remember all the accessories for that thing. I remember getting the magnifying glass that you would put on there to make the games look bigger, and it was something really cool about the fact that you went from playing something like a Tiger handheld, which was games that played nothing like the game that you initially were trying to play. I mean, Double Dragon, I could see Double Dragon being good in the sense that you probably walked in a static motion and just punched things with one little animation, but the Game Boy games are full-fledged games, like Super Mario Land. Super Mario Land was Mario on the go, and it's still a really good game. It still holds up, I think. I love that game. But looking back, and it's just wow. And of course, they started coming out with different Game Boys. They started coming out with the Game Boy Pocket. I remember I had a clear Game Boy Pocket that I had gotten from my sister's boyfriend at the time. They broke up, and he kind of left his Game Boy Pocket, became my Game Boy Pocket.
I thought he'd given it to you as a gift. I'm wow, that's a cool sister's boyfriend. He just forgot it there, and I took it.
Yeah, he just never came back, and I'm like, well, if, a month later, I was just I guess this is mine now.
Yeah, so that was one thing. I never had any of this. And sadly, I missed out on Game Boy Color. My next handheld ended up being the GBA. Many years later,
Which was GBA is such a good handheld.
That
It's
was a
so
day
good.
one system for me. It was one of the few because we pre-ordered. Had a buddy that worked at Toys R Us. It was a friend of ours' brother. It was actually way cooler than our friend was, but he let us know I think they had either they'd come in early or as soon as they got there, and we had both pre-ordered. Went in, got the GBA, of course, Castlevania, and man, I'm like, damn, did we get? I know. Oh, no, I got Castlevania and Fire Pro Wrestling. I'm like, oh, of course, yeah, it would be a wrestling game.
Well, and going to the Game Boy Advance, I mean, as much as I love the SP was backlit screen, especially the 101 model, like that's got like the really bright screen. As
Yeah,
much as I love it, I honestly still love the shape of the original Game Boy Advance because it was almost like you were playing like a mini controller. Like it was still super comfortable even to this day.
yeah, I'm with you as far as I really kind of wish Analog Pocket, which they have a bit more in shape of the SP. I kind of really wish they had done GBA, and if the Analog Pocket had not come out, I'm sure I actually in people you can get these, and like I said, if you don't want to invest in an Analog Pocket, which does have a lot of cool attachments, that you can play other games on, but at the same time too, a lot of people make carts for the GBA that you can play games from other systems on. I have the GBA cart that has it's either Game Gear or Master System games on it. So those are available, but if you can get a backlit GBA, and like I said, people mod these, or you can buy a GBA, usually send it to somebody, and it's something, I don't know, I might still invest in one day. It's kind of hard for me to justify. It's like I've already spent so much on handhelds lately. Don't know if I would, but like I said, anybody out there, if you want to get like the ultimate, handheld, GBA family system, I would recommend getting a backlit GBA because and it will play Game Boy Color and old Game Boy games all on a backlit screen. So it's really hard. And as Xander said, like it's so comfortable.
Yeah.
It's one of the best ways to play it.
Yeah, and another thing too with the handhelds that's gotten like really popular that I've been really diving into, and I've been on the market trying to figure out which one I want to get, but that's the emulator handhelds, like with emulation. There's so many like when you think about like emulators and you think about handhelds, you think of like the really crappy like Chinese knockoffs that like just have like all these games, like 50 to 100 games, and they're all bootleg, and it's progressed so much more. And there's some like really great brands. I was actually pulling up some right here. One that I've been really looking to myself is it's called by it's like Ambernick. It's the RG351M, and it looks kind of like a almost looks like a Vita. Not really a
Ah,
Vita, not really Vita. I would say it's one of those more rectangular style handhelds with the two.
yeah,
It's got two analog sticks, and it goes all the way up to PlayStation 1. And like the thing about these is like they're using Android as the OS, so it's super easy to like put your ROMs on, and most of them come already preloaded with the SD card, so you can right off the bat play as many games as you want. But a lot of these companies are taking like older phones and they're taking chipsets out of these older phones that are still pretty good and making like monster handhelds out of them and selling them all over China. I think it's freaking awesome. I was like, dude, that's so freaking cool. It's like it's getting to the point now that you can play Dreamcast on the go. Who would have thought? You know?
yeah. Because I had bought one of those at Best Buy that I want to say it had like a Capcom license with it, and it was still just like, ugh. Like, because
Yeah.
it wasn't any of the, like, sometimes you want more like arcade games, and it was like
Yeah.
NES games. Not knocking those, but then you had a share of like the bootleg ones. I will go back because I know we had like a big space in between, like when we had our Game Boys, went to the GBA. Was there any that you played that friends had along the way? For instance, I had a friend who was the first one that had a TurboGrafx. His dad was a
Oh
doctor.
wow, yeah.
And both of us had the divorced parents, but his dad was a doctor, so he got the Turbo. Hey, I benefited from it, man. I'm not
Oh
knocking
yeah.
him. He got the TurboGrafx and the Turbo Express,
Oh yeah.
which honestly, I'm thinking I played the Turbo Express, which might have come out even before. Because I remember just the time when I had my Game Boy, like me and him weren't hanging out as much anymore, just as friendships go. Not to be sad about it, but I remember him having, getting the Turbo Express, and at that time it was weird. And maybe the Game Boy was out. Like I said, I'm getting a little crossed over, but
Yeah,
it was
it was
kind of
out around
cool.
yeah, it was out around the same time. I'm
Same time,
looking. Yeah.
because you figure the Game Boy had its own unique games, whereas the TurboGrafx, it just played the same games the system did.
Yeah.
But we thought that was pretty cool, and it was also a beautiful screen, and also very expensive at the time too. Man, I want to say the Turbo Express was like, I mean, not as much as it is now, but that was probably like a $350 to $400 system
And
at the time.
you could still connect it to a television. So you could still use it as a console cuz it had a TV tuner that you could hook up to the television, and it also allowed you to hook up a multi-tap, which was
Ah,
insane. When you talk about Turbo Express, and this was something that was only released in Japan that I found out about, and I'll definitely have to send you a picture of it, James. This thing's pretty cool. Right after the Turbo Express, they came out with the PC Engine LT, and it looks like a PC Engine with a built-in flip-up screen,
oh wow.
and I was like, man, that's really freaking cool. Like, it's almost like a portable PC Engine at this point. It looks like it only plays the Hue cards. It came out in day after my birthday, December 13th, 1991. Oh wow,
Wow.
that's pretty cool. But
Yeah, that's
yeah,
one. I might have missed that one because that doesn't sound, you know, super familiar.
and
But I
then
mean,
and then
it
I
was
was
revolutionary at the time,
yeah.
like I said, to play those games on a handheld, even though you could just play it on your TV too.
Yeah, my friend, you had a friend that had the PC Express. I had a friend who had the Nomad, which I
Oh
remember. I
wow.
remember that, and we talk about the Nomad and the PC Express playing, the cartridges on the go. One of the things I really loved about the Game Gear, though, was the fact that you had an adapter to play Sega Master System games.
Dude, yeah, I still have one for mine because I had ended up a Game Gear was a system I got later on in life, getting some used, finding them, pick them up. I think I gave one to a friend, but I have that adapter that plays Master System, and that still is one of the coolest things
That's so
about it.
cool.
And it doesn't, I mean, it's a little, bulky, but hey, being a kid growing up with these handhelds, you got used to adding on all this
Oh
crap.
yeah,
So it wasn't that extreme. But to have that, because that's something, we see, a lot of handhelds nowadays that will just play Nintendo cards, Super NES. It's something people still want. They want to play their older games. And, like I said, Nomad playing Genesis, that was great. But Master System was, one a lot of us kind of missed out on. And, I had a friend that had one that had like one game. And then I had another friend that had one. I think they had two games. So
yeah.
having that even if you didn't have a Master System later on and you got a hold of a Game Gear and that adapter, it opened up, to what were basically kind of the same, bit games, like, but
hmm
it just gave you a bigger library, which was really cool.
Yeah, I'm sitting there looking at some of these handhelds and stuff, and man, okay. Let me ask you this before I get into this topic. Was there ever a handheld, James, that you always wanted to own that you never had?
I mean, up until kind of like recently, I kind of still always wanted a Lynx.
Oh
Um,
yeah,
just like it was one of those like come and go. Like it was here, it was gone. I didn't know anybody that had one. It was
it was one of the only handhelds too that you could play left-handed if you were
Yeah,
left-handed,
it
which is
had that
cool.
option. Like it had some very interesting games. You had a version of Ninja Gaiden on there. I think that was a bit more the arcadey one. It
Yeah.
probably even had a good Double Dragon. Of course, you had a lot of the like California games. Epics was a big backer behind the Lynx. You had a lot of their games on there, but it was one I didn't really care about at the time. It was one later on when I was collecting that I really thought about getting it, and they would still be like kind of expensive, and it was just kind of hard to justify, the price on it. So I finally gave up on actually wanting one of those. But I don't know. if I could find like a GBA cart with a bunch of Lynx games, and even the Analog Pocket, it's going to have a Lynx adapter at some point. But then it's still trying to get all those, games, which some might not really be worth it. But that was the kind of one that I always just kind of wanted, didn't get, and kind of gave up on.
Yeah, I've always wanted a WonderSwan.
Oh
I
man,
always thought the WonderSwan was a really cool game. I've never like had one. I've only played like the ROMs, and there's a really good ROM or a really good version of Ghouls and Ghosts on the WonderSwan, and of course as well on the WonderSwan you have like the Final Fantasy games and stuff like that, and of course that was Namco Bandai's competitor to the Game Boy, and that was by Gunpei Yokoi, the creator of
yeah.
Game Boy, which was
Japan only too.
yeah.
So sometimes playing the emulators, because you did have Final Fantasies and such, some cool RPGs might be better to find the ROMs of, since they have translations and such. But yeah, dude, I was kind of looking at a few of those too, just for like handheld collection. But it was one I never really jumped the gun on, you know.
And of course, we have to talk about it as well. We got to talk about the Neo Geo Pocket Color. That,
Definitely.
jeez, man, that's such a good handheld. That's probably like, it was funny because before the Neo Geo Pocket, you know, I've always, since I was a kid, I've always been a fan of fighting games. I've always loved fighting games, but a lot of the fighting games on Game Boy and even Game Gear, they were okay. Like they weren't perfect. They were okay, but man, Neo Geo, like those fighting games on the Neo Geo, and the fact that it only had two buttons, it had a little awesome clicky little thumbstick, two buttons, and they made like some of the best fighting games. They were so
Yeah,
good.
they really are. I had played one of the SNK versus Street Fighter games, and I mean, I give a shout out too to Game Boy, because they had some similar ones. I think I had one of the Fatal Furies on Game Boy, which I never played early on. Now I played it after I'd played SNK fighting games, and while it's not as good, it's fairly comparable. Uh, and I imagine that being SNK being behind that, they really were able to kind of just nail that formula for, man, like what an awesome fighting game, like you said, for having two buttons. I
Yeah.
know the Switch had one that was very reminiscent of those old SNK games. Can't think of what the name is. It might just be called like Pocket Fighter.
Yeah, they
Um,
do. They do have a Neo Geo Pocket Collection on the Switch now as well.
yeah, that's out there too. So either that one or the Pocket Fighter game, I'd highly recommend this, because I mean, you could really see, like, man, you might have played a version of Street Fighter 2 on the Nintendo, and you're like, man, this is horrible. But to have this little black and white system, or even Neo Geo Pocket Color, they had some on both, to be able to do that with the limitations and come out with a completely competent fighting game, just completely awesome. And I bought the Neo Geo Pocket Color from you, and
Yeah.
I still added on a couple games. I got the Samurai Showdown on there,
Oh yeah.
also awesome. Then you got your basic stuff like Pac-Man, and it's still a really neat system that I still enjoy having.
Yeah, and I mean, and of course, because I mean, there's so many handhelds out there. I mean, I'm looking at the Pandora. You remember when the Pandora was like the open source handheld? I remember when I think of Pandora, I think of All Gen Gamers and Gamester 81 back when he had that thing
Oh
pre-ordered.
God,
It became like a joke. I was like, when's the Pandora coming out? But and then you had like off the wall handhelds, like of course you had the one by Nokia. The
Game.com, was that the?
no, that was Tiger. I'm thinking of the Engage. You had the
Oh
Engage.
yes.
The thing looked like a freaking taco. You had that, and of course you had the Gizmondo, which I always love talking about the Gizmondo handheld, because it had a camera. It came out back in 2006. It had a camera. It had a GPS. It had text messaging. It had Bluetooth wireless connectability. It played off SD cards. It only sold fewer than 25,000 units. It's regarded as one of the worst commercial failures of handheld consoles. But the maker behind the Gizmondo was actually a member of the Swedish Mafia.
Wow.
So I remember I watched a documentary on the Gizmondo, and I was just like, no shit, that's freaking insane. But I mean, and of course you have going into Sony with the PSP and PS Vita. Matter of fact, I believe the Vita store, I believe, is closing this month.
I know there was something about it. They heard people that it was closing a while back, and then it wasn't. But I think it might actually be finally.
Yeah. That's such a shame, and that could be right there. That could be a good topic as Sony in the handheld market, because it's almost like everyone loved Sony handhelds like the PSP and PS Vita, other than Sony. Like, it was so weird.
Yeah, there was one you'd seen. It's like it would come out and like PSP, and I finally got one. Later on, and it's still like I have a big old stack of games for it. Seems like there could have been so much more behind it, but it was just like they kind of just put it out there. And I still love the God, I'm trying to think of the name of it. It was that one. It's like it's kind of like a part racing game, and you're cops, something Justice Force, Pursuit Force,
Oh
Pursuit
yeah,
Force. Man, that just feels like a Dreamcast game to me. It feels very Sega-ish. Jumping on other people's cars and connecting these some kind of big long string thing. You'd catch other people's cars, jump on them, punch through the windshield, and arrest them. It was great.
yeah. What got me getting the PSP when I got the PSP was of course when Castlevania Dracula X Chronicles came
yes.
out. Because that was before then. People got to understand, like, when Dracula X Chronicles came out for the PSP, that was like the first time that Rondo Blood came to the U.S. This was before the WiiWare release of it. So it was a game that's still stuck in Japan, and unless you had like a Japanese PC Engine CD, you really didn't have any other way to play it. So I was like, man, I got to get this, and I went and bought a PSP. And I remember the big thing with the PSP as well was the modding community. I remember there was like a guy that worked at Spencer's. This is back, when the PSP was around, and I worked at Babbage's. I worked in the video game store. He worked at Spencer's, and I remember I went in there and I was like, "Yeah, I got my PSP," and he was like, "Oh, I got my PSP," and he was playing like Super Mario World on it. And I'm like, "Whoa, how are you doing that?" And he's like, "Oh, I modded my PSP," and back then it was just like, "Ooh, a modding console. This is crazy talk."
Like, mod this, dude. Come on.
Yeah, now everything can be modded, but it was, and like PSPs are like super easy to mod now, but back then it was like such a foreign concept. And when the Vita came out, and the Vita, I think the Vita in the beginning had a much better push than the PSP had. But again, it was like Sony just decided not to support it anymore, but there was still a lot of support for the Vita itself from third party, especially the Japanese market. If you want a niche Japanese console on the go, the Vita is the way to go. There are like so many great visual novels, JRPGs, like, just really quirky, weird games. And I think the only thing that really is hindering with the Vita is, of course, the same problem you had with the PSP, and that was the primarity, the memory cards. Proprietary memory cards. Of course, there's workarounds around with that now, because if you do jailbreak your Vita, you can get an adapter to use like an actual SD card. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah. I would like to look into like getting more like stuff put on my either PSP or Vita. Like, I got my Vita from somebody my wife worked with that was selling his. She ended up buying one for me. So and I got one of the earlier versions that apparently has the better screen. And it is it's a beautiful screen, and I love Sony's handhelds, but of course we can't ignore one of the huge handhelds. Of course, was Nintendo's comeback with the DS.
Oh yeah.
As we mentioned, like I said, the GBA was awesome, lasted many years, and especially if you're a bit more of a retro fan. You can't go wrong with that. Like I said, the Metroids, the Double Dragon Final Fight with all the extra stuff added in the games was very awesome. But they jumped up, with the DS, the dual screen, and of course we got the little stick thing, which of course was implemented, I think, way more in the DS's lifetime. It kind of went away, and sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. we didn't really like that in Castlevania, having to draw. I mean, drawing
Oh
pentagrams and stuff is
yeah.
always cool, but
Oh yeah, and
uh,
Dawn of Sorrow, like drawing the little insignia like symbols when you fight
yeah,
a boss. And what would suck is if you didn't draw it right, then you had to keep fighting the boss. It was like, come
yes,
on. I
so they
hated
did
that.
definitely add the stick into more games than they should have. Though I think the stick did have its place. Like I said, I'm a huge fan of the Cooking Mama games. And that played a big part in that. But you got such a wide variety. I think with the DS that you got, your classic games, a lot of franchises that came back. But then you had all those, weird ones. Like I said, the Cooking Mamas, your Rub Rabbits, and that was just an odd one right there.
I really liked Brain Age on the
Oh,
DS.
dude,
That
yes.
was such a good game. And you know what's funny, James, is like when we first started this podcast, we were both getting into a handheld, and that was the 3DS because 3DS XL was coming out.
And I mean, you jump from that, you figure the DDS, the DS, and then you go into the 3DS with the initial one. I remember like my brother had got it. He jumped on it very early, as he does with most Nintendo products, and he ended up getting that ambassador program.
Yeah.
Where you got the bonus games that nobody else has. That was just
That's still
so cool.
There's still games that were on the ambassador program that still have never been re-released by
No,
Nintendo.
No, that was such a. I thought, and while you could be jealous to not have some of those games later on, like I thought that was still one of the coolest things.
Yeah.
To hook people up because they did come out, because it was a 3DS and they had the new. Was it because the 3DS XL came out so soon? Was that
No,
why
I
they
think
did
they
that?
just had an initial price drop.
That's it.
Yeah, they
That's
had a
it.
price drop, so the people that were the early adopters got the ambassador program. And I remember it was like I think we had like a couple episodes when we first started, and I remember we were talking about the 3DS, and it was like we were talking about the 3DS XL, and you were like, "Yeah, I'm thinking about getting the XL," and I'm like, "I might get the XL because I already had the 3DS." I was like, I might get it, and then my 3DS ended up getting stolen.
Yes.
So it was like the next time we recorded, I'm like, so my 3DS got stolen, so I bought a 3DS XL.
And because I missed the initial one. Like I remember, like I went from DS. I did get the DSi XL. That was the Mario. It was the red Mario 25th anniversary,
Ooh, that
and
was
that was
always
the
that
one.
one looked nice.
It did, but I actually ended up trading that back because I gave my DS to one of my nephews when I got it, and I wanted my DS back. So I offered to trade my nephew my 3DS XL. I'm sorry, DS XL, the red Mario one. I traded it back to him and got my DS back because I had the 3DS XL, I think, at the time too. And I like playing, much like we mentioned the GBA original. I
Yeah.
like playing GBA games on my DS, like
Oh
which that will
yeah.
do. And it to me, like to some it's a little heavy, but it has that GBA feel where it's a little bit wider, and like I like that where your hands don't feel as cramped. So
So
I do
this
love
was
playing GBA games on
so
that.
you were playing the GBA games. Was this the original DS or was it like the
Yes,
DS Lite?
no, it was original DS. That
Okay.
was the one because like I said, I had it and I bought the DS XL Red, and I gave the original DS to my nephew, but I traded him my DS XL Red Mario
Yeah.
back for my original DS because I felt bad because like I'd given it to him and I was like, "Hey, dude," I'm like, "Would you trade?" I was like, "This is better. Would you trade?" He's like, "Yeah, sure." So he took
You're like
the
sucker.
no, I mean not really. It was
No,
it was
it was.
better.
It was. It's just.
In a sense, he did get a better deal. I think
Oh
I think he
yeah,
got a better
yeah.
deal.
Well,
But
you know,
I,
the thing about the thing about the DS too, the original, it was such an odd handheld. Like it had such a weird angles and shapes to it.
yeah,
I had the original DS to begin with. I had the red DS that came
the
with Mario
brick we
Kart.
call it the brick, the old one.
Yeah, they came with Mario Kart. I had that one, and then I ended up getting rid of that one and ended up getting a black DS Lite. And the reason why I was asking you about the Game Boy Advance because I remember how amazing Game Boy Advance games look like on the DS Lite. Like those games look so good.
Yeah,
That screen was amazing.
it was just cool to have that option. Like I said, you didn't have the OG Game Boy or GBC on that one, but still have that option of playing GBA. I loved, all iterations after that of the DS, like just, they dropped it, which is why, like I said, I went back to that, and it's not too heavy. I love that option, and it's like it's still one like I'll sit and play, but
Yeah.
I could see it being heavy, to some, but then when they jumped up to the like we said the 3DS, it had the ambassador program. Then you started getting, the XLs, and like I said, we both ended up getting those, which, I still thought it's,
I, s-
great system.
I still want to get a 2DS, to be honest. I still want to
Dude, I
get.
was looking, honestly, I was watching Metal Jesus's video that he had on all his Nintendo handhelds, and he was talking about the 2DS and how
Yep.
he'd heard so many people say it was like so comfortable, and I was still looking at it, and I was like, oh man, I'm like, that would be, but I was like, then do I have to like transfer like my stuff or I'm
Yeah.
like, maybe that's too complicated. Unless I just want to use it like just for, all my cartridge games I have, and I can just like pop those in. Because
Yeah.
3DS too, also backwards compatible with DS, to which there is a huge library, man. I mean, like I said, I think there's no issue if people get any type of 3DS or 2DS, and I mean, you have a huge library of games, that you can play of all different types. Really awesome.
Yeah. I really want to get a. I've really wanted to get a 2DS just to mod it. Like get a
Oh,
2DS
that
and
too.
because they're easy to mod now, and the Nintendo's really not supporting the 3DS anymore at this point. I mean, the eShop's still up, but I mean, I'm not. I was talking to a friend of mine on Facebook because he was talking about the old R4 cards because they still make R4 cards for like
Oh,
for 3DS, and he was like, I'm wondering if the RF4 is like still worth it now that the modding community it's so easy to soft mod. And I'm like, well, I mean, unless you're playing online, I don't think there's really any issue. And then he was like, oh, but Pokemon. I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot Pokemon, but I don't really play Pokemon that much. I mean, I wouldn't see myself playing Pokemon on the 3DS anyway. So I was like, well, shit. I would love to get a 2DS and just mod it, and then you can put emulators on it that had the whole homebrew channel like they do on the Wii. So you can get the emulators, you can put those on there. You can play, all the 3DS ROMs and ISOs. I'm like, dude, come
yeah,
on.
you can get two. I mean, I have one of the. It's a DS and 3DS game, that's got, 100. It's got all the old DS stuff on it. You can easily get, Mad Illegal
Yeah.
or whatever. Who cares? But it's it's like a 500 or 301 cart, that it's just like I'm still looking through it and be like, oh man, like this is cool, because there's a lot of games like I missed. I bought a lot of the major titles, always bought Castlevanias and such, but there's still so many on there that it's awesome when you can go, like I said, get a multi-cart, mod it. You can do so
Yep.
much with it.
And I mean, like and just closing the topic because we're getting close to the end of the show. Just handhelds in general. I know there's some people out there who don't understand the concept of handhelds. I've seen and I saw it a lot online when they were talking about the Steam Deck and they were talking about the new Switch mod, where some people were just like, I just don't understand handhelds. It's not for everybody. I'll go ahead and say that. Not everyone can play handheld games, but for me, like there's something special about handhelds, like especially like something like a JRPG. I love playing JRPGs in handheld mode. There's something like unique about it. And I know James, you've been a big fan of handhelds since I've known you. I mean, it's just there's something about handhelds that are just so quirky and cool.
Something bad. They're real good for families. I think, especially like if you got a dude that plays games and maybe goes off in another room, plays the games. Lots of times, families, wife, kids, they just want the dad like hanging out in the room. He can sit there and not pay attention to this crappy movie that the kids
Yep.
are watching, and you can play your handheld. Just being in the room counts for a lot. I've always been a proponent of that. I don't have kids, but even my wife, like, hey, if there's a big game she knows I just bought, and I can go off and play that, but sometimes if she's watching something I'm not interested in, she knows that it's okay, and I can sit there and I can play my handheld, but just me being in the room means a lot. So I think handhelds are real big,
Oh
like
yeah.
as far as that purpose. I mean, they're great. And there's so much on there. Like I said, we get the capability to play games for many generations. As you said, some of the little emulation systems, um, anything you want, dude. The modding, I mean, everything is so open. There's so many options. Whether you're an old school retro collector and you just want the carts, like I said, I still collect Game Boy games. That's one of the only systems I really collect for. Anytime I see any type of Game Boy game for like $1 or something, I'm buying it. Like I said, hell, DS. I got a Red Bull game. I don't know what the hell. I don't know if you're like
Wow.
riding a bull. It was $1. I recommend going to GameStop and looking at the DS section, especially if you have like a 3DS or a DS you could play, and just go through and just pick up some garbage that is like $1 a piece because they're still there. Sometimes they're harder to find now, but you can also get like crazy lots on eBay. There's just so many different games you can play in there. Like you said, I think with RPGs, it's so good. You can really get lost more, I think, in that handheld thing. And like I said, it's good for as far as a personal thing for you is getting lost in it. And like I said, it opens up stuff for family things too, to where you can hang out in the room and still play games. So I mean, they're very versatile, and you can take them on trips, airplanes. Man,
Oh yeah.
they have everything you could possibly need, I think.
Yeah, the see the progression just the last 30 years of handhelds. I mean, going from the Tiger handheld to now playing The Witcher 3 on the Switch. Like that's insane. I mean, the Switch, one of the things I loved about the Switch is the fact that, when I'd be working at jobs that were kind of slow, I'd be working there for like 4 or 5, 6 hours and nothing to be going on. I'd bring my Switch and play, legit games, not just like little, snake game or something. Like I was playing like Ys. I remember I beat Ys 7. No, not 7. 7. I beat Ys 8 like while I was at work. I was playing Ys 8 and I'm like, oh man, this is so freaking good. So I mean, it is really interesting to see the progression of handhelds and how it just keeps getting better. And I'd like to see the way handheld gaming is, heck, 5 years from now, what it looks like, especially with the Steamdeck and whatever Nintendo's doing.
Yeah, just on the horizon right now, like I said, in between Steamdeck, Analog Pocket, Playdate. That's some crazy things right there. You never know. Xbox always mentions a handheld sometimes. I think they might have given up on it, but you never know. And like I said, to see to where Nintendo's going to go, they're they've been the kings.
Yeah.
That Switch, they finally nailed that perfect, handheld and actual console, and to see where they're going to go in the future too. Are they going to, keep riding that out, or will we see them do a specific handheld again in the future?
Yep.
I'm kind of leaning more towards no, but with them, you never know. It could be a world where both things still exist again, and everybody, just has them all, and enjoys it.
Indeed. Well, guys, this concludes another episode of XSGaming Podcast. Now, if you enjoyed the show and you're checking us out on my YouTube channel, that's youtube.com/Xander Skullion, be sure to also check us out if you have a membership with Spotify, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, iTunes. We're also on those platforms as well. And if you check us out on those platforms, guys, be sure to give us a review. It really helps more people find the show. And what are some of your favorite handhelds? What are some of your favorite handheld stories? We didn't even dive into like some of our stories and things that we've went through with handhelds, going to different places, road trips, blah, blah, blah. Leave a comment below. I'd love to hear some of your thoughts, guys. And as always, thanks for listening and happy gaming.
Also, check out Drill Dozer on GBA and have a pleasant evening, everybody.
See you guys later.